Last month, we heard from Frontier Development that a core feature of Elite Dangerous is going to undergo a complete reboot. This major change is planned for the last quarter of this year, although we have seen delays for such updates in the past, so it could slip into early 2027. Frontier rebooting features rather than making an entirely new game makes sense to me. After all, players have invested years, if not decades, of their lives building their characters and their assets, and rebooting outdated features seemed, in my opinion, to be the right way to keep the game evolving over time. In this video, we are therefore going to discuss what we can rule out from the start before taking a look at features that could be candidates for such a significant rework. So, anything that has already received a recent large-scale overhaul is extremely unlikely. Powerplay, for example, has just gone through its 2.0 iteration. It would make very little sense to reboot a system they only just rebuilt, especially when it's still being expanded and balanced. The same logic applies to Odyssey's on-foot systems. While they may still need refinement, they are relatively new in the life cycle of the game. Core flight mechanics are also very unlikely. Flight in Elite is one of the most stable and well-regarded parts of the experience. Reworking that would risk alienating the long-time player base, which Frontier has historically been careful to avoid. Similarly, ships and engineering, despite their flaws, are deeply embedded systems tied to years of player progression. A full reboot would be extremely disruptive unless it was done in a very gradual and layered way, rather than a complete reboot. In addition, both exploration and mining have already had their big moment, which makes them far less likely candidates for a complete reboot right now. Exploration, in particular, was significantly expanded with the introduction of the Full Spectrum System Scanner, the Detailed Surface Scanner overall, and later Exobiology through Odyssey. It's not perfect, but it has seen a foundational redesign. Frontier tends to iterate after such changes rather than wipe the slate clean again so soon. Mining follows the same pattern. It went from a very basic activity to a much deeper system with core mining, subsurface extraction, and different resource types. Like exploration, it's now in a refinement phase rather than something that feels outdated enough to justify a total reboot. And of course, if you have any other ideas about what definitely will not be redone, let me know in the comment section down below, but as far as I'm concerned, I think that these 4 gameplay elements here can definitely be ruled out. Now, that leaves us with what could or should be remade. To me, the mission system now stands out particularly. Compared to exploration and mining, it feels like it never received that transformative pass. It still carries a lot of legacy design, repetition, and weak integration with the wider galaxy. If Frontier wants a system that touches every player and modernizes the experience, that is an obvious one. Particularly, I would like to see more mid-range missions that either won't only take us to the neighborhood systems or those tens of thousands of light years away. It would be nice if we could more easily stack missions together, especially passenger transport ones, and I would also like to see better rewards and missions with secondary objectives. The background simulation is also a prime suspect. Unlike mining or exploration, it hasn't had a clear reboot moment and instead just had layers added over time. Sure, it's powerful, but hidden, and that's exactly the kind of system Frontier might want to bring into the spotlight. In addition, the background simulation needs to take under consideration the player efforts made with colonization so that the newly created player bubbles get perfectly integrated into it. Multi-crew remains another strong candidate. It hasn't evolved nearly as much as other systems and still feels like a missed opportunity. Compared to how much depth mining and exploration gained over time, multi-crew is noticeably behind, notably due to its hard limit of 4 players. I think it's about time that Frontier lets players form teams much bigger than we currently have, especially with the upcoming operations mission. It would also be nice if we could multi-crew with NPCs, and not just one, but multiple ones, who could fly our fighters, and more than one at a time, or man our turrets, or even better, fly our other ships with us. Now, that would truly be epic. And then there are the quiet systems. For example, crime and punishment, the economy, the faction interaction. Those haven't had the same level of attention as mining or exploration and yet influence everything players do. Crime and punishment in particular needs to be redone in my opinion. For example, I think the interstellar factor solution is ridiculous and it's hard to figure out where we can pay our bounties or fine right now. We should be able to do it anywhere, and I also think that there should be more penal colonies. Maybe even players could build some, which would allow us to respawn in player bubbles if we get arrested for crimes, which sometimes is not even our fault. Of course, we should not forget about the elephant in the room: planets. The addition of new types of planets would be one of the most natural ways to evolve the current system. Frontier development already has a technological foundation in place with its current terrain and atmospheric tools. Building on that to introduce more visually distinct worlds with stronger biome variation and more extreme geological features would go a long way toward addressing one of the most common criticisms, that many planets feel too similar. This kind of change would not require discarding existing tech, but rather pushing it further in ways that make exploration feel fresh again. Expanding the range of landable planets would also be a logical step forward. At the moment, players are limited to relatively thin atmospheres and specific environmental conditions. Opening access to denser atmospheres, more hazardous environments, or even partially terraformed worlds would dramatically increase the sense of discovery. It would also create new gameplay opportunities, as different planetary conditions could require new equipment, new strategies, or even new ship configurations. I also think that gas giants are particularly compelling here because it introduces something that currently does not exist in any form in the game. Rather than traditional colonization, floating cities or industrial platforms within upper layers of gas giants could act as entirely new types of locations. These could, of course, serve as for missions, trade, or even conflict, all while offering a visually striking and mechanically distinct experience. It would expand planetary gameplay without needing to make gas giants fully landable in the conventional sense. So, while planets may not be the most obvious candidate for a complete reboot, they are far from being a closed chapter in my opinion. What I'm suggesting here is a different kind of evolution, one where the system is not replaced but significantly expanded in scope and ambition. If Frontier decides to go to this direction, planets could very well become one of the most transformative areas of the game, not because they are rebuilt from scratch, but because they are finally allowed to reach their full potential. Last, let's discuss the structure of the galaxy and the way it is traversed in Elite Dangerous, which remains one of the most defining aspects of the experience. Distance, time, and scale are all tightly linked through the frameshift drive, which has changed very little in its core design over the years. While this has helped preserve the sense of immense scale of the game, it has also introduced a level of friction that becomes more noticeable as players engage with content spread across vast regions of space. As new systems such as colonization and expanded exploration continue to develop, the limitations of current traversal mechanics may become more apparent. Introducing a new form of long-range travel could significantly reshape how the galaxy is experienced. A frameshift drive capable of covering hundreds of light years in a single jump would not simply be a convenience feature, it would fundamentally alter the relationship between players and distance. Exploration would become more accessible, trade routes could shift dramatically, and previously remote regions might see increased activity. However, such a change would need to be carefully balanced to avoid diminishing the scale that makes the galaxy feel vast and meaningful. One possible approach would be to tie extended range travel to specific conditions such as infrastructure, resource investment, or established routes, ensuring that increased mobility remains a strategic choice rather than a universal upgrade. Alongside traversal, the question of identity within the galaxy becomes increasingly important. Much of the Milky Way in the game is composed of procedurally generated systems with technical designations, which, while accurate to the simulation, can feel impersonal. Systems with names such as my own system, for example, which is called 285 Sector BX-HB24-6, reinforce the immense scale of the galaxy but offer little in terms of memorability or player attachment. As gameplay evolves towards deeper interaction with the galaxy, this lack of identity becomes more noticeable. Allowing players to name colonized systems, stations, which is the case already, or even planets could significantly enhance the sense of ownership and immersion. This would transform locations from abstract coordinates into meaningful destinations shaped by player activity. Naming rights could be tied to discovery, development, or long-term control, reinforcing a sense of progression and investment. Over time, this could lead to a galaxy that feels not only vast but also lived in, where certain locations carry history, reputation, and strategic importance defined by the community. Taken together, changes to traversal and the introduction of player-driven naming systems would represent a shift in how the galaxy is perceived. Rather than simply moving through an enormous but largely anonymous space, players will gain the ability to navigate it more dynamically and leave a lasting mark on it. This would not necessarily require a complete replacement of existing systems, but it would represent a meaningful evolution of how the galaxy functions as both a setting and a shared space. In the end, not everything in Elite Dangerous needs to be remade. Many of the core systems remain strong, and in some cases, they define the very identity of the experience. However, there's no denying that certain elements now feel outdated when placed alongside more modern additions. Over time, layers have been added, improvements have been made, but not every system has received the kind of deep transformative attention required to keep pace with the rest of the game. That is precisely why the approach taken by Frontier Development makes sense. Rather than abandoning years of player progress in favor of a sequel, focusing on reworking and modernizing existing features allows the game to evolve while preserving the investment players have made. Commanders have spent years, sometimes over a decade, building their fleets, their reputation, and their place in the galaxy. Resetting that progress would risk losing what makes Elite Dangerous special, whereas thoughtful reworks that can breathe new life into systems that no longer meet expectations would definitely help. At the same time, there's an important question that cannot be ignored. Reworking core systems is not just a design challenge, it is also a technical one. As the game continues to grow in complexity, the limits of the engine become an increasingly relevant factor. Each major overhaul must not only improve gameplay but also integrate smoothly within everything that already exists without introducing instability or unintended consequences. So, while revisiting and modernizing older features is clearly the right path forward, the real challenge lies in execution. The ambition to evolve the game is there, and the foundation is already strong, but whether the underlying technology can fully support these transformations remains to be seen. So the question now turns to the community. If one core system in Elite Dangerous were to receive a complete reboot, what should it be, and how far should Frontier Development go? Should the focus be on modernizing missions, deepening the simulation, expanding planets, or even rethinking how the galaxy itself is traversed? There are so many answers here, and that is exactly what makes this such an interesting moment for the game. Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. What would be one feature that absolutely needs to be reworked, and what should be left untouched? And if you would like to support the channel and keep this kind of content going, consider joining our Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. It truly makes a difference and helps push the channel further. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video. I've been the Eradicator, and I'll see you guys in the next one.